never count the cost. From Sandy Hook till now, the lists just grow, and still they do nothing. They put on a show. We scream for action, we scream for care, but Congress just sits like they're unaware. Enough is enough, we can't wait anymore. The blood keeps spilling while they close the door. We're not gonna fix it, no, we ain't gonna fix it. We're not gonna fix it anymore. We're not gonna fix it, no, we ain't gonna fix it. We're not gonna fix it, that's for sure.
Can't sing, but I can drum.
Bills sit in drawers while lobbyists cheer. Another shooting hits and they don't interfere. We beg for safety, we beg for change, but Congress looks away. It's so deranged. We're not gonna fix it, no, we ain't gonna fix it. We're not gonna fix it anymore. We're not gonna fix it, no, we ain't gonna fix it. We're not gonna fix it, that's for How many more? How many cries ignored? When will the leaders stop and finally be floored? We won't forget, we won't stay quiet. Change is overdue. Raise your voice. Don't let them ignore.
Not bad. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Not bad. That was fun. Thank you for joining us. This is Divided America. That was not my original score or vision for the song. I wanted to save this song for the inevitable school shootings. That's going to happen eventually. I've been messing around a lot with AI, and I wanted to share what I created. There's the lyrics that are on the screen right now. I'm going to pop them off here in a little bit. Let's see if I can do that. There we go. I'm learning a lot lately with the production value. I'm trying every week. Now, my original thought was to put those lyrics behind Twisted Sisters, We're Not Gonna Take It. First of all, you don't want to hear me sing. That wouldn't work for anybody. Second of all, for permission to use the classic, I reached out to JJ French. He's the guitarist and manager for Twisted Sister. His answer was somewhat expected, but I'll read it for you. He said, "Hi, George. We sold the rights to the song a long time ago and have no legal connection to it. Contact Universal Music Publishing as they have total ownership of the song. Good luck, JJ." I loved that JJ even reached back to me. I respect the integrity of artists, and I want to speak to one commenter in from the TikTok feed. I try to not use AI when possible, but as a one-man show, it is what it is. I can't physically do everything. I just can't. And for this particular version, I loaded the lyrics that I had written into a music generator named Murica. I watched a video with my son from this popular YouTuber named Steve Turberry, and I'll put that link in the description as well. And if you want to cover the song, please go for it. I'm gonna put the song on Spotify, and it's also on YouTube as of right now, and I'll put it back up on TikTok eventually. But back to the show. The DUI hire Pete Kegset is still employed. How is that possible? Right? He's a war criminal, still employed, but we'll talk about the Department of Defense after the break. Because right now, I'm dealing with a lot of commenters that were in this specific feed, TikTok. YouTube feed seems non-toxic. The TikTok one, though, woof. You guys, can you really say with a straight face, hand on Bible, right? I swear to whatever God you believe in, and say that we are being invaded by a foreign country or countries. Actually invaded. Because if you can tell me which ones, then I would agree with everything that you say. But the answer is no, right? We're not being invaded, because invaded implies war. And I think I can talk somewhat expertly on invasions, considering I was part of the 4th Infantry Division based out of Fort Hood out of years 2003 to 2005. And if anybody knows history, our infantry division caught Saddam Hussein in Tikrit during that time. So I know a thing or two about invasions. And with all that being said, if it's not an invasion, then all this bullshit that's been brought down from this administration is based on a lie, right?
You'll never see me sleeping in front of Cat.
Last week, a sitting congresswoman was pepper sprayed during an ICE raid. Obstruction of justice was the overwhelming answer from most of the commenters. And in normal times, I totally agree with you, right? You don't want to obstruct justice. It's just part of how we do things. Ripping people off the streets is not justice. It's not. Now, I held a top secret clearance in the military. Top secret, TSSI to be specific. I wanted to be an FBI agent after my military service. I applied. I completed the physical fitness exam to be a local officer here in Rhode Island. I have friends and family that are either still on the job or retired in a serious city like New York. So please spare me the obstruction of justice crap, okay? It's not justice ripping people off the streets. And there are plenty of videos of ICE agents that wear way too much tactical gear. It's like they think they're playing Call of Duty or Battlefield 6 or something. I didn't wear that much stuff. I mean, we wore a lot of stuff, but I mean, what they're wearing right now is they're in what, Chicago? In U.S. cities, they really need to look like they're playing online video games. But no, they're not. They're ripping U.S. citizens, and they say they don't care, right? You've had to see the videos. You've had to see, like, there's an American citizen sitting in their car saying, "I'm an American citizen." You can't. I have rights. I mean, they don't have to say anything. We have 4th and 5th Amendment rights, which I talked about last week. If you don't want to miss any shows, please subscribe. We need more subscribers to keep growing. I listen to everybody, and I try to give you guys everything. So please subscribe. It would help tremendously. But they're saying to the American citizens that they don't care. They don't care about our laws because they're allowed to. SCOTUS, that is the Supreme Court of the United States, they've given ICE free reign with Vasquez Perdomo versus Nome. Christy Nome, the wonderful Christy Nome. Back to her in a second. You know what else was legal? So, because ICE is legal, right? They're allowed to do it. They're allowed to infringe on our rights. That's what a few justices in the Supreme Court said. Not all of them, just a few. You know which few. You know what else was legal? Internment camps. They were legal in Germany in the 1930s and 40s. Completely legal. How do we stop that? But let's just keep this domestic, right? We'll just keep it here in the States. We had internment camps here after the Supreme Court allowed it. Well, let me fix that. We had internment camps for almost the entirety of World War II, our portion of it. But it became legal after the Supreme Court case of Korematsu versus the United States in 1944. 1944. That's 3 years after the horrible, horrible bombing of Pearl Harbor. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, I think it was, I was reading and researching before, I think it was 3 days after the Pearl Harbor. There it is. Executive Order 9066. Not 9066, not Order 66. 9066 signed into law by Franklin Delano Roosevelt allowed the internment of Japanese Americans. Now, could you imagine being a Japanese American during this time? You just sitting in America, and all of a sudden, the country that you're somewhat from, but not from, right? I mean, I'm an Italian American, but I'm not from Italy. I'm from New York. I live in Rhode Island. I'm from New York. Just imagine being a Japanese American during that time. Persecution just looks different now. The 90s and early 2000s, it was Arabs. They were on the government radar. You watch movies like The Siege. They were even produced before 9/11. Because we've been creating enemies for decades now. Just interfering with other people's elections, just like we don't want done with us. And that's why people start getting mad at us. So now the scapegoat, you know it, the Latin community. For what? Where would we be without them, without the Latin community, without the Italian community, without the Irish community, without the Black community, without every community? Because we're all humans. A common theme on this show. So what can we do? Well, because this is the law, right? This is. We think we have Fifth and Fourth Amendment rights and First Amendment rights, which I'm stretching right now, hopefully. But what can we do? Now, Mayor-elect and new best friend of the President of the United States, Zoran Mamdani, he put out a video recently highlighting your legal rights. I'm going to put that link in the description. I think that it's very important that you watch it. It's a smartly worded video. It doesn't matter if you're quote unquote legal or not legal. They're coming for everybody if you stand in their way. So don't stand in the way. But at the same time, you have to. It's a tight rope that we're playing right now. Please listen to Mayor-elect Mamdani. He's a much more eloquent and smarter gentleman than me. Now, we discuss a lot of this stuff during every week here on Tuesday, and you won't miss any of this if you subscribe. So please subscribe. I'm no secular leftist. So before you try to put me in some kind of like little box, right? Because I talked about Mom Donny. I'm not. I've been a law-abiding citizen my entire life. At the FAA, I had to wrangle in all those old guys, all the boomers. And they just want to spend all your money, right? They just want to spend it. They don't care. It's tax. It's already funded. It's there. Well, spend it, George. If you're not going to spend it, someone else is going to spend it. That's my limited impression of my old boss at the FAA. I doubt you're watching, Jim, but like seriously, like the way you guys spent money, it was. I know we tried. I know me and you, Jim, we somewhat tried, but now because Doge has been gutted the federal government, I can't imagine how much money they are wasting at only this little airport here in Rhode Island. The budget was already asinine when it came to personal items and all that. I've reached out to some former employees, but no one wants to talk about the current regime because they're scared. Because look what happens. Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of the closest, biggest MAGA there are, is now leaving, right? She's leaving office come January. Now, I have to really check this reporting. I do not know Puck Media. I've heard about them, and I heard about them on the Midas Touch podcast, which is an amazing podcast. They're almost near 6 million subscribers. They tell it how it is. And Puck Media has reported, and it makes a lot of sense after hearing what Kevin McCarthy said. I'll tell you that in a second. Puck Media reported that that Marjorie Taylor Greene is only the first of a potential another 20 Republican Congress people leaving because they're done. They're just sitting there waiting for the president to make up his mind. They're not doing their job, and they left positions of power, of good paying jobs to sit in D.C. and do nothing. That's not what they want to do. I believe this reporting. I do. It makes total sense because as someone who is who I consider myself a self-ideologue, and I'd love to run for office, but at the same time, sitting down with Jim Jordan and talking with him, man, that does not sound fun. I'd have to protect myself if anything. So this all comes up because there's another case in front of the Supreme Court. And I can't believe that these 5 justices, well, 6 now, they work off of what's called the emergency docket, and this is where the legality of all of it ends. We're going to take a super quick break. After this break, we're going to talk about the legal. Remember, we're talking about legalities, right? The legal funneling that the Trump administration and your tax dollars. We're going to talk about how the Department of Defense and government contracts after the break. Now, it might seem a little boring, it might, but as always, I always have a pop culture reference, right? Now, my pop culture reference for the first segment is something that the Barksdales taught us in season 3. Slim told it to Avon. He said, "We fight on that lie. Even if it's a lie, we fight on that lie." That's what this administration's doing every single day on our streets. Stick around. We'll be right back real quick. Hello and welcome back. We have a major story developing in America's race to rebuild its technology supply chains. And this morning, the CHIPS Act and the CHIPS and Science Act, a law that everyone associates with microchips, is being used in a way that we haven't seen before. And that's why I have this AI thing going up in the YouTube feed. A North Carolina startup called Vulcan Elements has just been offered $50 million in CHIPS Act incentives. Now, if you don't know what the CHIPS Act was, it's an act from the Biden administration, and in particular, Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo, our former governor of Rhode Island, was a big part of that. And if I remember correctly, many of the Republicans voted against it. I don't have the exact vote for you, but I will. Now, it's not unusual alone with this, but the headline is that the Department of Commerce now, they want an equity stake in the company. Now, not everybody understands what that meant. I didn't completely understand it, but yeah, that means the federal government would own part of the magnet manufacturer. Didn't the Soviet Union own companies? Like, that's nationalizing, right? That's maybe I'm pontificating there and I'm speculating. I'm not sure about that part. Sounds crazy, but these aren't ordinary magnets. These are neodymium iron boron magnets. They power everything advanced, from fighter jets, missile systems, drones, electronic vehicles, wind turbines, medical devices, even semiconductor equipment itself. And right now, China controls roughly 95% of the global magnet production, right? It's unsustainable. That's not a supply chain. That's a chokehold. So what we're trying to do, and sometimes I do agree with this administration. I think I've been listening to the president's book, The Art of the Deal. I think I'm on chapter 3 or 4. And I'm trying to get into his head a little bit. And I understand him where he's a businessman. He tries to make big deals. So I understand where he's coming from with this a little bit. It's just it's of course if the shoe is on the other foot, if Biden or Obama is doing this, you're gonna hear socialism, right? That's because that's what this looks like. Walks like a duck, talks like a duck. It's a duck. Now, Vulcan's new plant's in Benson, North Carolina, and they would produce 10,000 metric tons a year and bring around roughly 1,000 jobs, which is great, right? Nothing bad about jobs. But there's more money flowing. There's also a $620 million loan from the Department of Defense. That department. Or Department of War, Department of Defense, but we love talking about Pete Hegseth here because that DUI hire has got to go. But altogether, you're looking at more than $1.4 billion behind a single U.S. magnet supply chain. $1.4 billion. What if I told you that one of Vulcan's early investors is Donald Trump Jr.? So you have the CHIPS Act power, the supercharger startup. They have ties to the president's family. In Washington, that doesn't go unnoticed. I'm in Rhode Island. It doesn't go unnoticed. It was Friday. It was a Friday. I was joking to myself that there's no more Friday night news dumps, but sure as heck, this was a Friday night news dump. But put politics aside for just a second, because this is the new industrial battlefield. If America doesn't build magnets, we don't build jets, missiles, electric cars, or next generation energy systems. So this CHIPS Act, it's no longer about just semiconductors. It's the backbone of a much larger strategy, right? To rebuild critical manufacturing inside of America. Which, again, it's a good thing. I think this is a great thing. It's just the backdoor deals and they were so worried and wasted so much time and energy on Hunter Biden. And then this story drops on a Friday. And it's almost like it's not being reported enough, or maybe now you'll see it somewhere this week. It'll start being more, because it's a small media company named Puck, which I haven't vetted myself. But if Midas Touch ran with it, I'm running with it. Like, Midas Touch seems pretty damn trustworthy these days, more trustworthy than some of the mainstream medias. I listened to the New York Times this morning. I listened to a lot of news. And the first news they talked about was dynamic pricing with Instacart. Talk about bougie. Like, really? Americans are struggling to buy items as it is. And then something as bougie as Instacart to lead the New York Times Tuesday morning, when there's just too much news. There really is. There's just too much to report on. There's too much to dig into, and there's just an insane amount of corruption, an insane amount of, you talk about draining the swamp. This is it. This is what, if I was in 2015 thinking drain the swamp, drain the swamp, drain the swamp. This is case A. Now, the pop culture reference that I promised, if you've never seen this movie, I highly, highly suggest it. It's a movie called War Dogs, and it stars Miles Teller and Jonah Hill. And it gives a brief example of real-life government contracting. And when I worked for the FAA, I did a lot of contracting. I held a certain level. It's called the COR. And you have to know all the rules. And those rules are let me give you an example. I think it's called 8A. It's a veteran program where if you are a veteran-owned business like me, right? You've been if you've had the business for a certain amount of time, then you can get into a program called the 8A program. At that point, you have 7 years where you have almost zero contract. You have zero people fighting with you for a contract. If you bid for a contract, your bid almost has to be taken, or it can be taken. For example, like if you're a manager at a FAA facility, let's use real life examples. If you're a manager at an FAA facility, you have a $50,000 project that you need to get done. There are rules upon rules upon rules of anything over $10,000 in the federal government if you want to spend tax dollar money. However, if you can find an 8A contractor, you can circumvent the rules and go right to that person. And you can give that person $50,000 and say, get this job done. It doesn't stop at $50,000. I'm using a real life example from here, small Warwick, Rhode Island. Think about how much is not being reported. You know how you've heard about how the Department of Defense loses, millions a year. This is how they lose it. It's one of the ways, because they give money to companies that can't handle the business, and then they're not going to get the money back from the business. It's not how it works. That's just a brief microcosm of government contracting. Government contracting is disgusting. And now with the people who are in charge, with that, like I had scruples. I'm scared to look at the books because I was the bookkeeper, right? If you ever watched The Untouchables, another great pop culture reference. How did they take down the mob? They got the bookkeeper. The bookkeepers at the FAA, I know, are not doing a good job. How do I know? Because that was my job. And then I left, and then they didn't hire more people. So they're struggling to keep up with laws. One more specific example. Waste Management, right? They're a very popular trash company. They would increase our bill at the FAA roughly every month, every 2 months. They try at least. And I would have to email them or call them and say, hey, this bill is too high. We have a contract. And they would come back and say, well, if you look at the contract, it's based upon certain factors such as gas prices and so on. I remember having the email back to the Waste Management, the manager of them that was handling me, my client manager, and was saying, I remember telling him, like, the gas is lower than it has been in the last 5 years, and you just upped our price. I said, so it can't be both. Well, I fought and got a locked-in number for the FAA for a certain amount of years. That locked-in number ended when I left the FAA. I'm scared to know what we're paying just on Waste Management alone at the air control tower in Warwick, Rhode Island. If anybody in the FAA, any admin officers, fund certifiers, MPAs, anybody wants to send a spreadsheet my way, I know how to read them. Like, I know your Nexus spreadsheets, I know your Regis columns, I know it all because I did it for 10 years. Subject matter expert when it comes to federal budgeting and the FAR, which is the Federal Acquisition Regulation, which is, I can guarantee that this administration is not following the FAR. The FAR is complicated. It's a pain in the ass. It really is. I tried to work around it myself. I hated it so much, but you have to do it. It's the rules. You can't buy things with taxpayer money without a specific set of rules. And there's no way they're following them. I want to thank everybody that came today. I watched today. Is Puff Daddy a serial killer? Because that's what's on my radar right now. I'm watching the documentary on Netflix, and I mean, if he's not a serial killer, it sure as heck looks like he got Tupac killed. I can't believe what I'm watching on this documentary. So we're working on that. I told you before, we're working on a local story with a manager here, a property manager who is degrading a certain population. Still reporting that. Still reporting the police in Pawtucket. And then we started the show with a song, and then we started talking about ICE. And we've talked about the war drums last week. So hit subscribe, you won't miss. The war drums in Venezuela. And if you lose Laura Loomer, right? Before we joked about, if you lose Marjorie Taylor Greene, if you lose Laura Loomer, I'm going to read a quote from Laura Loomer about the impending war in Venezuela. I have no sympathy for narco-terrorists being killed. It's just worth noting that over 90% of the drug supply coming into the U.S. is coming in from Mexico, especially the fentanyl. Fentanyl is not being manufactured in Venezuela. Given that 90% of the drugs coming into the United States are killing Americans are coming from Mexico, when can we expect to see airstrikes on the Mexican cartels in Mexico? Laura Loomer's words, not mine. Or what about China, since China produces the chemicals that are used to make fentanyl in Mexico? It makes a lot of sense to start with neutralizing the Mexican cartels, since that's where most of the damage is coming from. It makes me wonder why this hasn't been done. Surely the Department of War, she tagged Pete Hegseth, knows where all of the Mexican drug lords live. If you lost Laura Loomer, you might have lost it all. Today was Tuesday, December 9th, 2025. Christmas is coming up. I'll see you guys next week. Thank you and good night.